20 minutes ago, somebody called Joe Rainbow left this comment. Could you please do a vid on how to achieve the Oasis sound on your amp with the settings and stuff, because it never sounds right whenever I do it. Cheers. So I thought, why not? Now Joe, you left your comment on the video I released containing all the lead guitar parts for Don't Look Back in Anger, so I'm going to assume that you are talking specifically about Noel Gallagher's lead tone for that song. To get his tone on Don't Look Back in Anger, Noel used a Fender Stratocaster given to him by Johnny Marr, the guitarist from the Smiths, and he used it through a 1963 Vox AC30 that he bought from the guitarist from the Hollies, who got it from the Cavern Club in Liverpool, where the Beatles used to play. Now Vox AC30s are legendary for their tone. They were used by Brian May, Paul Weller, The Edge, Radiohead, loads of these guitarists who are famous for having a really amazing tone. They use the Vox AC30. And so Noel Gallagher was using a fantastic guitar, a Fender Stratocaster, into an absolutely legendary amp. Now I obviously don't own a Vox AC30 from 1963. I'd love to, but I don't. The other thing about the Vox AC30 amps is they are valve amps, so to get that creamy tone out of them, you've got to have them absolutely stamping. You've got to turn them up to the level where they're shaking the windows. So in the studio you can do that. You've got soundproofing, you've got all those kind of things. You can crank them to absolute full volume in a room sealed off on their own and mic them. And that's completely fine, and that's how you get that tone in the studio. However, for someone like myself in a home recording situation, you have to be a little more creative to get that tone. Now, something that I've constantly discovered over the last 25 years of playing guitar constantly in bands, in studios and professionally, is that your distortion, your overdrive, it's all about the amp. Don't rely on pedals, don't rely on a multi-effects unit. You need a decent amp, or at the very least, a decent amp head. As I talk you through how I got my Don't Look Back in Anger tone, I'm going to be showing you on my Blackstar amp. Now this is a solid state amp, it's not a valve amp. I'm one of those strange few guitarists who actually prefers the sound of a solid state. That's because it tends to sound the same every time. It doesn't change depending on the heat of the valves or the age of the valves or how loud you've got it. It tends to give you a pretty consistent sound every time, so I personally prefer a solid state. So here are the exact settings I have my Blackstar Silverline Deluxe head set to get somewhere near the Noel Gallagher lead guitar tone from Don't Look Back in Anger. Now on a Blackstar you typically have these 6 different options to choose from: clean warm, clean bright, crunch, super crunch, overdrive 1 and overdrive 2. I've put it on super crunch and I put the gain at about 9:30, 10 o'clock. And I've cranked the volume all the way up to full there. Noel Gallagher's sound is just about the opposite of the scooped American sound. This has got the bass pulled out quite a lot, the treble pulled out quite a lot, and the middle pushed to absolute max. And this little button here, the ISF, is an interesting Blackstar feature. When it's rolled all the way to the left, it's a kind of American tone, in the middle it's blended, and all the way to the right is a kind of British tone. If you have that all the way to the right, it sounds a lot closer to Noel Gallagher. Now this little dial here is the thing that really sold me on this amp. It's a solid state amp, but it contains valve emulation, so you can get that gorgeous valve sound, and you can even pick from 6 different classic valve sounds. Now this one here, the KT88, is my personal favourite. I use it for most sounds because I love the middle boost. So hopefully you're starting to see that the general theme here is push the middle, push the middle, push the middle, and pull out the bass and treble where you can. We've done it with the EQ here, we've done it with the ISF, and I've even done it with my valve selection. The only other thing I've done on the amp here is I've added in a little bit of spring reverb. because Noel Gallagher definitely has just a touch of reverb on his guitar in the studio. This little section here you don't need to worry about because that only controls the cab down here, and I didn't record using the cab, I recorded using the USB out from the head. Now, using those settings, I'm going to record a little lead lick using my Fender Stratocaster with the pickup selector in the middle position, and then let's compare the sound between that and some of Noel Gallagher's isolated lead. Now that's pretty close, but I think I can get even closer by adding a little bit of processing in the mix. So what I'm going to do to get my guitar tone just fine-tuned as close as I can to Noel Gallagher's tone is I'm going to push up the low mids and pull out the high mids and add in a tiny bit of really top-end treble. I'm also going to add in a bit more reverb. And if you listen to Noel Gallagher's part, you can hear a little bit of breakup, a little bit of distortion on the harder notes. So I'm going to push the output gain of the EQ right up to full, and then I'm going to put a limiter on it. And that will hopefully give us a little bit of that crackle and that breakup at the top end. Of course, the only way to get Noel Gallagher's exact guitar tone is to have Noel Gallagher's exact guitar going into Noel Gallagher's exact amp. But hopefully this will get us close enough that most people can't really tell the difference, especially when the rest of the band is playing. After you've recorded your guitar parts, listen comparatively to the guitar part that you're trying to match and then to your guitar part. Ping pong back and forth between the two and try to figure out which parts of the EQ need pushing up and which parts of the EQ need pulling out. Experiment, tinker around. In your audio workstation, your digital audio workstation, whichever mixing program you're using, whether Reaper or Vegas or whatever, go into your track that you've recorded, put an EQ on that track and experiment. Try pushing bits up, pulling bits out until you get as close as you can get to the tone that you're looking for. And that's pretty much it. Whichever amp or effects unit you're using, you'll be able to get closest to the sound by using a heavy crunch on low gain, pulling out the treble and the bass and really pushing the mids. But I would encourage you to give Blackstar a try. Even if you only have a tiny little practice amp, if it has a USB connector, you can still plug that into your PC and get access to the Blackstar Insider software, which is fantastic and has got so many different options and variables for you to tinker with the sound. So I would encourage you, give Blackstar a go. I'm not endorsed by them or anything, I just think they're fantastic. And remember, you're almost always going to get the best, cleanest overdrive from an amp, not from a pedal. Best of luck and have fun playing.